So I can build on that, and I think just to take what Menno just said a step further, in terms of we have excluded nature, if we expand the we from humanity to the earth, so that we don't talk from a perspective of being separate, but we talk from a perspective of being the same, so we, so I'm the earth talking to itself right now. Then I think what process we've been going through as the earth is becoming conscious of ourselves. So through humanity, we have found a way to be able to look back at ourselves as the earth. That's been our experiment as the earth has been to see, hey, can I become aware of myself as the earth? And I think probably one of the most powerful moments for us as the earth when we did that was when we sent part of ourselves outside of the earth, literally to look back at ourselves from space.
Wow.
And when we saw ourselves from space, that's such a big moment, the first time in a way that as a subject of the earth, we were able to see ourselves as an object, which is a really significant moment in our evolution. The challenge with that experiment that we're now facing is, of course, if you want to be able to look back at yourself or become aware of yourself, you have to somehow take some distance from yourself, like we did literally when we sent ourselves out into space. And when we take distance from ourselves, so as humanity, when we become aware of ourselves as separate beings from our mother, in the first years as humans, we actually still believe we're part of our mother. That's how we experience our reality. And then as the ego starts to develop, we become aware of ourselves as separate beings. Now, we as the earth going through a similar process. The tricky point then is when you kind of separate, or you create an awareness that can look back at yourself, whether we're then able to re-embrace our wholeness as that which we're looking back at, or whether we lose ourselves in the illusion of separateness, whether that distinction becomes separation. And I think that's where we're at now, as in this experiment, as humanity is kind of a large part of humanity has forgotten where it came from. They've forgotten that we are the earth, which is a kind of weird thing to forget. But well, here we are, right? And anybody looking down at the earth would, of course, see us as the earth, like they'd see any other animal or being on the earth. So the tragedy of that is, of course, that it's allowed us to, destroy our own body because we've seen ourselves as separate, and then we thought, well, we can just take everything that we need from this part of ourselves to feed this part of ourselves. It's like the brain mining the liver. It's insane. Mm-hmm. And yet that's what it's what the earth, if you think of it really, it's what the earth is doing to itself.
Wow.
Right, in this experiment. And of course, this system, the earth as one thing, should this experiment prove a danger to the survival of the organism as a whole, then the experiment would be ended. And that's the way any healthy living system works. So this particular expression of the earth, species of humanity, we're not about saving the earth. If we're interested in saving ourselves and continuing through that process of and Adam has said, of remembering, literally, which means to put the members back together, put the parts back together, remembering. who we are, which is the earth. And the moment that one holds a perspective of, well, I'm the earth wandering around experiencing itself, then the questions about, your lifestyle and sustainable lifestyle are just not questions anymore. It's a choiceless choice. Why would you do anything other than everything you can do to respect, honor, feed, nurture the body that you're a part of? I mean, anything you do which runs against that. So anything you do that exploits or damages other parts of our being as the earth, would be serious cognitive dissonance, as Freud was saying. And I think that's why we all carry so much stress in our system, because we know somewhere that a lot of the choices we have to make, well, a lot of the choices we do make are actually damaging to ourselves as a whole. And that creates a lot of pain, of course. And then you get into the whole thing about trauma and pain, and then projection of pain and stress and everything else out into the world around us. So I think we're at this point in time where, as an experiment of the earth, it's, well, are we going to make it or not? Is the earth going to manage to maintain a level of self-awareness through humanity and go on to survive and thrive? Or are we, as the earth, going to say, oh, well, lesson learned, didn't work out this time, let's end that experiment, and, over however many millions of years, or maybe another form of the experiment will emerge. And I'm not particularly attached to whichever outcome it is. The earth will be here whether humanity's here or not. The rest of the earth, anyway. The question is, but I think humanity is a beautiful experiment, and we've got really far, and we're at this point, and you can see that there is the possibility for us to wrap back in, as it were, and you can see that consciousness and those practices are emerging, but it's at that breakthrough, breakdown point, really. So all we can do is, for those who are conscious and aware, is put all of our effort into the breakthrough, as it were, the re-embrace, the alignment of everything we think and we do as the earth, and then, release any attachment to survival. But just keep doing whatever it is we can do, and we will see.
Now, let me interject just for one moment, because this is definitely a morbid, comical moment, a comic relief, I guess you can say, because taking Peter's transformational leadership course through Ubiquity, there's, which I think everyone on the chat has enrolled in the course and completed. But, you talk about, being committed and unattached, and that whole notion, that whole concept, at that time, never was I thinking about the concept of the consciousness of the earth deciding to detach us from the planet, or to essentially get rid of us, man. I'd never had that concept floating in my mind of not being attached to the idea of Earth saying, you know what, you guys were a good idea, but I think it's time to move on to something different.
Well, Rod, it's what the body does when it's functioning healthily. It's called programmed cell death. So any cell in the body that is damaging, that is threatening the health of the body as a whole, when the body is healthy, it will kill the cell. So cancer only emerges. Yeah, cancer only emerges when the programmed cell death function isn't working. So you could see, if you were to extrapolate it out in a way, from one perspective, humanity is having a fairly cancerous effect on the body of the planet as a whole right now. And maybe, you know, in terms of feedback systems, what we're seeing now in terms of ecological disruption and the way that's impacting humanity as a kind of response of the immune system of the Earth. That doesn't mean I don't believe humanity's not worth it. I think we are worth it. I think we're Earthlings and we belong here. You know, but we need to demonstrate that worth, you know, collectively and at a large scale. If you know, if it's going to be worth the Earth's time, as it were, of you know, us hanging around.
Well, in that process of cell destruction, programmed cell death, do the other cells get an opportunity to beckon on the other cells' behalf, or do they get a chance to take liberty and destroy the cancer cells before the body disrupts and melts down and have its own kind of, I don't know what that process would be called, but is there any way that
as I understand it, it's fractal and built into the cell itself. So if the cell has become dies, basically, it's kind of, you know, built into the natural.
I think
so you could look at it at one perspective and saying, well, humanity is being pretty suicidal right now. You know?
Oh, yeah, you know, and that's, I have heard the suicidal cells, and I think that was more the lens that I was coming from, that we don't take liberties to start killing each other when we recognize that one of us is not contributing to the health and the progress of the system. But I mean, that just brings in a very different kind of conversation when you talk about the cell itself committing suicide. Because essentially that's what we're doing. I mean, whether it be intentional or unintentional, is that what we do, what's the old phrase, what you do to others, you're doing unto yourself. But it looks like, Menno, you want to chime in, and Adam, definitely want to hear from you about some of these things, which I think is a great direction to move into. Menno, did you want to chime in or segue with something, Peter? Did you resonate with something Peter just said?
Oh, absolutely. Well, I wanted to say that in biology, I think it's called apoptosis. That's the way of programmed cell death. But yeah, I think what I like about Peter is that he calls it, let's say, the Earth experiment. That it's because when you operate from more of an individual level, like as in a human consciousness layer, so to say, you don't really see it as an experiment, because it might be threatening to the individual, to the sense of identity.
Sure.
And this is a very interesting process. And yeah, I like it a lot.
I don't know how much I like it yet, Peter, man. You're talking about we have no choice in the matter.
No. I'm not saying we don't have a choice. No, absolutely, we have a choice. You know, every single action we take, every single thought we have,
sure,
adds to the you know, the field of humanity and the Earth. So absolutely, as a collective, we have a choice.
I do, and I want to circle back around that, Peter, because I mean, I said it quite lightly, but I think that there is many interesting things that can be brought out of in terms of a conversation with free will, choice, and those kind of things, and about the Earth. If we are the Earth having a conversation with, well, experiencing self, what does that really mean in terms of will and choice? But we can circle back around there here shortly. I want to hear from Adam. Adam, what's your response to the question, what's been shared so far?
Yeah, well, my response was more about the technological emergences we have. And I mean, just when you, Peter, were talking about when Earth first created like an entity that went out to see itself, then we finally kind of got the tools to have the possibility actually to increase our consciousness by going out to the space and having this kind of awareness of Earth as an object, and we are aware of the Earth. So it was like shift of identity, where there was a kind of more individuation and then also with any kind of transcendence, there is always kind of ways where it can go wrong, where we can, like for this example, to go separate and just forget that we are from Earth in the first place, and we are Earth. So yeah, just ironically, Earth now is wanting to create a clone of itself in Mars, while we see like SpaceX programs and Elon Musk talking about having second planet, being multi-planetary species, which is he says it like this: it beats the hell out of being one planetary species.
Absolutely.
Which is really cool. So yeah, I think what I really want to share is just really living in an amazing moment where we have so much kind of directions, where Earth is taking so much experiments towards different directions, and seeing, okay, as if we went wrong somewhere, and then it's like kind of resetting, and then it's launching several kind of experiments to see. It's like a blind person trying to see, okay, where is the direction now? Where are we really heading? So you're gonna see like an amazing kind of burst of creativity in technologies, in political views. Now we're seeing a lot of voices that were unheard before, that were kind of denied. Now it's starting to arise and to take place in the media and in consciousness, and from every field, as if everything is screaming, "I'm here," you know, and yeah, let's discover this kind of path of experiment. So it's really an interesting time to be alive, and to see how we can connect actually all these kind of voices that are all screaming to be heard. It just feels like there is no one special kind of voice, where it's more kind of as you said, Peter, in the beginning, integrating these voices and having more integral, more broader and yet directional and focused directionality or vision of where we are going together, which is really about connecting the dots. Now we can talk, for example, about technology, where we see besides space programs, there is VRs, and the potential for VRs to get to raise consciousness is just amazing, because then you're just kind of creating a new world, and you're gonna live there, and experience fastly, with less risks, a lot of things, which makes
Adam,
it very possible.
Sorry, and Adam, you're referring to virtual reality, is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay.
Exactly. Virtual reality.
Okay, continue, please. Okay, good.
Yeah, and just with experiencing different kind of almost real things, makes more paths, you know, for Earth to experiment for itself of who we are, who am I, and just raise consciousness. It seems to be a lot about raising consciousness. Also, when we talk about AI, it just pushes our limits into understanding what does human mean, what does intelligence mean, really.
Absolutely.
And what would really be, you know, just last week I saw Blade Runner, the movie, and there was this replicants, which are, by the way, it's really a beautiful movie to see. And these replicants are like high intelligence androids, if I understand well. And it asks, you know, it pushes the limits of humanity as we know it. It's like, okay, my God, it's not just like there is so much going on, and we kind of disrupt all our kind of crystallized beliefs about who we are. And then there is room to move beyond, to be more conscious.
My sense is, Adam, building on what you said, as we as the earth become aware of ourselves, we then develop agency in relationship to other life around us. So, once we as the earth can see ourselves, then it's a natural next step to see ourselves as whole, as a part of something bigger. Right? Until that point, we're aware of ourselves as lots of different parts. So in animals, aware of itself as an animal, plant of itself as a plant, humanity of itself as humanity. But we've never, and the moment that we became aware of connecting ourselves, so that means we then become a whole, which becomes a new part of something bigger. And so it's no surprise that we as the earth are now looking to connect to other bodies out there in our own galaxy, as we expand in a way our sense of identity from ourselves as the earth to ourselves as the galaxy, and start to explore, how do we connect to other bodies that are out there beyond ourselves.